Hi everyone. So I wanted to share with you some thoughts that I've been having around the soul and consciousness. Some of you who know me know that I've been working on this for quite a while. And I just think it's time to start sharing some of those thoughts. So earlier I posted on Instagram this note. Obviously everyone got very excited by the spoon and the fork, which I did not draw. I just actually wrote the text. But some of the text was a little bit scribbly, so I thought I would go into it a little bit more. So what this video is going to be about is sharing with you why I think it's important to talk about the soul, the spirit, and I think in particular what I want to present to you is the perspective of seeing this through an information landscape. So it's really trying to build bridges between different universes, between science and between deeper knowledge than science. And so in order to serve that, I think the thing that I ask you to consider is that information is what makes the universe available to us. In my understanding of the standard scientific model, information is literally the two-dimensional landscape that makes all things possible. It is, think of it as the blanket that extends across the fabric of space and time and makes anything and everything possible. Without information, there is nothing to describe, right? So in that sense, the starting presumption here is that information is a universal language of infinity. If we imagine that there are endless worlds and they are all little different circles, how do we connect all these circles together? Because if they are to be one universe, then they must surely be connected in some way. And so I consider information to be the mechanism, the language that unifies everything into at least one plane of information. And so what I want to now do is build on that idea of information and talk to you a little bit about how I think about what this means to us. And in particular, I think what's interesting here is that how it relates to me as a human, right? So I'm going to start with this very awesome diagram. Let me get that right. Yeah, okay. So there we go. What is that? That's a human being, okay? What kind of human being? Doesn't really matter. They come in a lot of different flavors and colors. All very interesting. All human beings, many different shapes and sizes as well. The point is that this is deliberately vaguely drawn, firstly because I'm not a very good artist, and secondly because it's designed to speak to the soul, what's within. And so what I consider to be the soul is actually an information storage device. And essentially I would describe it as a holonic structure. So what does that mean? A holonic structure is different to how we think about reality. If you think about reality, you might think in terms of horizontal layers. So you would have atoms, molecules, become cells, become maybe organs or organisms, right? They become systems, maybe your lung system or digestive system or larger animals. Then they become an individual human, or then we can go to maybe the family, and then we can go up and up and up. But every time we're thinking about the level of reality, it's all horizontal. It's possible to think about reality as vertical. This is a holon, H-O-L-O-N. And, a way to think about the holon is you are present in your mind right now, but are you present in your cells? Are you present in the molecules? Are you present in the atoms? I don't know, but it seems to be working right now, right? I'm literally communicating to you because my cells and atoms are arranging themselves according to my will to express myself to you. So it doesn't seem crazy to think that there is something going on there. And so what I think the soul is in some sense this holonic structure that provides a way of holding information in place. And so what information is that? That information is who I am. So the way I try and think about this is like thinking like, a glass, like this is a cup of coffee. The only reason the coffee is not spilling all over the floor and going everywhere is because it's in a vessel, right, inside the cup. And so that's what I think, the soul could potentially be doing. The soul is the vessel that contains the information that makes us who we are. So we have the soul, then, what do we actually have inside of it? What we have is information, just information. Now, information can be defined as a difference that defines the difference. So I've just drawn lots of little dots there. And basically, the way I think about information is as the yin-yang symbol, black and white. Now, what's interesting about information is that information is descriptive. So if you were only immersed in the yin-yang symbol inside the black, you wouldn't actually experience or perceive anything. There would only be blackness. There'd be no difference. Likewise, if you were only immersed in the white, information only emerges at the boundary of black and white. Where the black meets the white, that line is where information is created, because there is something to describe black encountering white. And so I think within the soul, lots of different types of information inside of me are coming together, and that is creating essentially a topological landscape of possibility. I mean, there's a lot of data going on in here, right? Very dense information structure. We have genetic data, we have epigenetic data, we have psychological data, emotional data, lots of data. So it's not like a few drops of data, right? It's unimaginable quantities of information are within my soul system, right, are compromising who I am. I mean, just my DNA alone is extremely complex, right? And so what I think is happening, long story short, is that inside, if you think about this sort of as white and black, and then think about, one of them being plus, one of them being minus, they kind of attract each other. They create this creative tension inside of each other, right? Different ideas, So for example, maybe the idea that I want to be a hard worker, right? So that would create tension in me around being lazy and being a hard worker, because that's something that I want to be. Or it might be, for example, I want to be vegetarian, right? I'm trying to eat less meat, and yet there's that conflict that I enjoy meat, and I'm also not very good at disciplining myself. So, difference is created through tension. There needs to be a space where black meets white. There's always going to be that boundary of difference. And so I think that dancing data essentially creates spirit. That is that what maybe could be called anima, life force. In some senses it's prana in Hindu mythology, or chi in Chinese mythology. And so really I think the spirit of who I am is generated in many ways by the tensions of the data within me. And so, as I read and learn and absorb information, that adds to me and mixes up inside of me, and is generating creative energy, creative desires. It's generating things I want to do, things I don't want to do. It's creating something to do, right? As opposed to doing nothing at all. So then if we have that information all moving around me, then there needs to be some kind of mechanism that is organizing all of that, or it's just going to be a giant mess and fall apart, right? It's not necessary to organize it. It can all just fall apart, but then there's nothing to discuss because it's all fallen apart. So what I think consciousness is the phenomena of organizing all the information with the intention of preserving the state of the soul, right? Essentially, if you think about it like this, and all the information is moving around all over the place, if there isn't something that's organizing it, the form will be lost and it will just dissolve into nothing, right? And so stability must be achieved and sustained through time. And I think consciousness is the mechanism that serves that. And so I'm not going to go into here about consciousness beyond humans, because there's just too much to talk about right there. But essentially, I think consciousness is the mechanism. I've written down a little note here. Consciousness organizes the expression of the differentiation. It manages and directs tensions. That is, it's the perception, the perceiving act of light meeting shadow. So if we think back to the yin-yang symbol, consciousness is neither black nor white. It is the perception of black meeting white, right? It is the third space. You have black, you have white, and then you have the ability to perceive the whole. It is the perceiving act. That is consciousness. And so that line is only there if someone is perceiving it. And that's really very much in line with quantum theory, where things only are real as in if they are being perceived. So essentially what that means is there needs to be a data loop between the observer, the external thing that is being observed. Something like this here. That circle is the observer. I'm seeing an X, and the X is being presented to my mind. And so that feedback loop makes X real. If I don't see X, then it's not real for me, right? And so that takes us into the fourth element here. So we talk about the soul being the form, the vessel, the holonic vessel in which our data is stored. The spirit is the emergent phenomena of all that information mixing around inside of us and generating life force. Consciousness being the phenomena of organizing all this information and essentially being the sort of the intelligencing act, right? And then number 4 would be understanding the importance of flow, because we don't just exist on our own. We are interacting with the world. And what I'm drawing here are arrows going into and out of our human being here. So you can see here I've drawn all these arrows, and what that symbolizes is data flows. Data flows coming from the outside of the world into me. That could be conscious data flows, me reading something. It could be unconscious, smells that are going on, background things. I mean, it's interesting that all things are data. I mean, gravity waves go through us that, right now there are trillions of neutrinos flowing through my body and yours. There are massive amounts of flows that we're not really aware of, and yet they still shape us. And so, what's important to understand is that I think we live in a flood of data. The problem is not scarcity, the problem is infinity. There's overwhelming amounts of information and data. So how do we navigate through infinity? And the way I think which we navigate through infinity is to find what is meaningful for us. And so there's an important difference between information and meaningful information. And meaningful information is information which is deemed as being relevant to myself. And that could be for anything, right? If I want to get fit, then things that I perceive that will help me get fit are relevant to me, and things that are not going to help me are not relevant to me, right? And so meaning exists in the act of perceiving, because that is how we are able to discern what is relevant to us or not. So basically, what that means is consciousness is deciding what is relevant and what is not. And there's many different mechanisms for that decision-making process. But what that really does is it transforms the flood into reality. Let's break that down a little bit. What does that mean? Well, if you look at light, it's white, right? So if you imagine us putting a white light in your face, you'd actually be blinded. You wouldn't see anything. And I think this is essentially what we would see if we saw infinity. We would see nothing, actually, because it'd be overwhelming. So the trick is to realize that light is made up of different colors, right? We take a prism, we can see the different colors of the rainbow in the white light. So I think what consciousness is doing is essentially filtering out the flood and actually saying, out of all of this, let's say this is infinity, just take the tiny little bits that matter, because I'm a very, very small consciousness in a very, very big world. And I don't have the faculties of being able to process everything, certainly not at the conscious level. So it's really, a reality emerges as a filtering mechanism of the data that we experience, right? It's essentially where you can understand that in this being, this is a finite being encountering an infinite world, right? So reality is this circle, this distorted world that I would call it actually, that is the boundary in which the finite meets the infinite. And so that is what we perceive reality to be. It is this matrix that's pulled over our eyes, but the matrix exists as the limitation of what our consciousness can handle. If we can upgrade our consciousness, then we can handle more reality, right? If we compare ourselves to an ant and I have very different levels of consciousness, and so therefore we presumably have very different complexities of reality. It's not that my reality is better, but it is certainly more complex than that of the ant. Now, the final thing here that I think is interesting is, so we covered soul. That's the vessel in which we reside, I think. Covered spirit, which is the life force that animates us, driven through tension and data. We talked about consciousness as being the organizing phenomena of all of this, and so to try and make sense of the world. And then out of consciousness meeting world, we have this sense of reality being created. Consciousness is filtering meaningful information and is assembling a reality that allows us to make sense of what is going on around us. And so then we can add the element here of time. So as this person voyages through the universe, right, creates a sort of sense of an hour of time. We have the present, we have the future, and we have the past. And so this then allows what I would then describe as identity to emerge, because as our consciousness encounters reality, it stores experiences as memories, right? And memory is the foundation of identity. If you can't remember anything, you don't have an identity. And so as we remember ourselves going through the world, the universe, our identity assembles around us. And so identity emerges from meaningful encounters between the finite and infinite. That means we have to decide what is relevant and what is not. And these encounters are stored as memories, which is why memory is the foundation of identity. Who I am is in many ways defined by the memories that I have chosen to remember of my experiences through the world. So identity is interesting and important because it is the highest order control system, essentially. Identity is what regulates complex activity. And in many ways, for us to find our way through the universe and to be at peace with the universe, it's about assembling an identity that is in harmony with the other identities around us and the world around us. So there you go. I hope you found that interesting. We've talked about the soul, we've talked about the spirit, we've talked about consciousness, we've talked about reality, and we've talked about identity. Leave your thoughts below. Thanks a lot. Have a great time. Bye.